GM, welcome to Web3 Academy, your one trusted source to capitalize on the next big phase of the internet. Don't get caught in the hype cycle. I'm Jaybird, joined by my co-host Kyle Reedhead, and we believe that L2s are going to change the world. That's why we're carving a path for doers to confidently build and invest in Web3.
Jay, this was a great conversation. I mean, we obviously love L2s. We talk about it all the time, and that's what Mantle is. And so we, of course, dive into that journey and kind of what they're building. But Mantle is so much more than their L2. And I think Arjun did an amazing job of explaining that. The story in this discussion really starts off. I mean, the first question I think I asked was, how the heck do you guys have 60,000 ETH in their treasury? So Mantle has this long story. They used to be a DAO. We'll get into it still are a DAO, sorry, but we'll get into it in the episode. But just a really, really interesting success story of kind of Web3 and following the ethos of Web3, everything from like governance, community-led, decentralization, like all the things. And they've been able to build some pretty incredible stuff as a result of doing that, which is not easy. And so Arjun just gave some incredible tips and advice for anyone building in the space. So, and then just the story of Mantle is incredible.
And Arjun's just an absolute rock star, having previously been the vice president of growth at Polygon, where he was there for 3 years and really joined in testnet, or maybe right when they had just launched mainnet, and then was part of the rise of Polygon, and then left Polygon. It would have been pretty easy to just stay there, but this guy, this is a true builder. He is a doer at heart, and he wanted to build again. And so then he joined the Mantle team, and now is part of building Mantle. He's the head of ecosystem at Mantle. So he's the visionary that's trying to get everybody, all the trains operating at the same time. And he talks about how they do that when there's so many things that they have shipped in the past 6 months. It's incredible.
Well, he's been in the technology scene for a while, and previous to Web3, he was in AI. And I love hearing that because we hear a lot lately of people leaving Web3 to go to AI. He went and left AI to go to Web3. So I think that's super cool and gives a couple extra brownie points for Arjun, that's for sure. But let's just get right into it because it's an incredible episode and so much to learn. So we'll let you guys just go and soak it all in. But before we do, let's take a quick second to hear from our sponsors.
Modern newsletters are built on Paragraph. That's right. Paragraph is a brand new newsletter platform that combines the best parts of Web 2 and Web 3 to supercharge newsletters for both writers and readers. Build a community, not just an audience. Paragraph uses blockchain tech to allow readers to collect and own the words that matter to them. This takes reading a newsletter to the next level. With Paragraph, readers can mint, collect, and show off quotes from their favorite newsletters. This opens new possibilities like creators sharing revenue with fans. I also love their new feature, Paragraph AI. This integrates GPT-4 natively in Paragraph to create, edit, and improve your writing effortlessly with one click. And guess what? We at Web3 Academy are on board and have already moved our content over to Paragraph. We believe this is the future of newsletters because of the profound engagement it creates between creators and fans. So, whether you're a creator, writer, or an avid reader, it's time to check out Paragraph and capitalize on the opportunity of being early. Arjun, welcome to Web3 Academy. So excited to have you here today.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Well, let's start with you just coming off ECC. We were just chatting before we hit record. You're a little bit tired. You're there for almost 2 weeks. How was ECC? What was the highlight?
So I think ECC was great this year. Very high signal event, great production value, so super well organized. It was something I was actually planning to tweet about later in the day, but then we had a huge turnout and huge number of projects. I think almost 321 projects submitted for the ETH Paris, or rather ETH Global Hackathon. But I think one of the interesting metrics for me was that 22% of the people who turned up had never heard of Web3 or crypto before. So I know there's a lot of there's so much narrative out there, right? Web3 is down and people are going to AI and people have lost faith in this space. But I don't think that's true. I think when you go to these events, you kind of realize that it's so early for us, and majority of the people don't know about the space, and that's why it's a responsibility for all of us to go out there and tell people about what we're doing, what we're building, so that more and more people, hear about the Web3 space. They get to see the good side as well, which is the building side, the project side, people who are trying to, actually create value. So I think, I was super happy, very bullish after each CC, great quality, great turnout. I think in terms for highlights, at the risk of sounding biased, I would say that our network, Mantle network went live during ECC. So for me, that was a highlight. And then, we had a bunch of events where we had a great turnout as well. I think people were generally very happy. We got some great feedback from developers, from users about, how they felt about the network, what the UI UX was like. So I think all things considered, like that for me was the main highlight. But there was like a lot of good things about ECC in general. And yeah, so I had a great time. Yeah, of course, like almost 11 days. Was super exhausted. But, I think in Paris, I didn't feel it one bit because the energy was just there and it was infectious, just get into you. And then next thing, like you just literally sleeping 2-3 hours a day, you don't even feel it because it's just so much fun. So I'm super excited and I'm looking forward to I think the next one is going to be in Belgium. So I'm looking forward to that one. Yeah.
And then you get home right after and you're exhausted and you sleep for like 12 hours straight.
It kind of hit me on the plane back. Like, I think I missed all my meals, I think the air hostesses were very kind. They didn't wake me up. I just slept power nap through the entire flight.
Conferences are exhausting. I don't understand how someone can not know about crypto and end up at ETHCC. Like that's like one of the ones that's like the Ethereum based ones are the big ones. Maybe it's like permissionless or I don't know, consensus. They're more mainstream, but that's wild, but that's great news.
So there were a bunch of things. There was not just ETHCC, there was also the Modularity Summit where there was some amazing technical discussions, by the way, about like the design philosophy, which we have also followed at Mantle, which is to build like a modular design. And why that is the way forward. There was like ETH Global Hackathon, ETH Paris. So there were like a bunch of different events. So that's kind of why the turnout was very, you could say, well balanced, where there were like developers, there were enthusiasts, there were like all the funds, or people like me from protocols. So I think it was like a really good mix.
Right. Interesting. Well, before we get into Mantle, I just want to get a little bit of a background of you. You worked previously as Vice President at Growth at Polygon. Would love to just get a little bit of an intro or take us however deep you want on kind of your background and your story and walk us through up until Mantle.
Okay, so I've been in tech like throughout my life. Started with software engineering, then I worked, across like marketing, business development, like many different kinds of roles in the tech space. But I guess the turning point was in like May 2016. I was in an IT services company. I was, reporting to the CTO at the time. And then a part of my job was to figure out like what would be the next growth engines in the tech space. So that's kind of when I was looking at AI, I was looking at machine learning, and I came across sort of the Bitcoin white paper. And I like to tell everybody, right, I didn't get it the first time. So I had to like read it, a couple of times. And then I think what really struck me wasn't so much the cryptocurrency aspect of it. It was mostly the decentralization. This kind of a thought process or this kind of a thinking model of building decentralized technology. And the more I thought about it, the more I kind of realized that how it solves some of the most pressing problems we face in the world with the way how economics are structured and how things could be. So that's kind of when it started for me. And then I started attending events. It was such an interesting time in 2016, right? Like you go to this like event and there are like 12 people there. Like that's it. Yeah, that's like a totally different vibe back in the day. But then I just made it a point that I turned up, like whoever was there, I made it a point to, stay in touch with the ecosystem, see what's going on, became a part of some of the Discord channels at the time, so the early ones. Started reading about Ethereum, bought some ETH to play around with the network and do all of that. So, and then after that, I was working in a computer vision startup. So I was in an AI company. We were building technology for self-driving vehicles. And I sort of, the founders ended up exiting the company. And that's when in 2020 is when I decided to go like full time into Web3. So that's when I joined Polygon as head of growth and BD. And at the time, Polygon's testnet period had just ended and we were going into mainnet. And I was basically brought in to, build out the teams, get the adoption and sort of just focus on all of those different aspects, developer relation, a bunch of things. And so that's what I was doing for about 3 years. I had a great time, made some great friends. I think it was a very, very special time in my life. I really look back at it very fondly. It's, we achieved many different milestones as a company and as a team. Then last November is when I decided that, I wanted to do 0 to 1 again. So then I sort of looked at other chains out there. I met the Mantle team and then I asked them, is this, where are we? Is the testnet out? They're like, no, even the testnet is not ready. I was like, oh, this is great. Like this is proper 0 to 1. So then I joined the company and then we've gone through the testnet phase. Now we've gone into mainnet. I think the team has done a phenomenal job. So first thing, shout out to the team. It's always a team effort. I think a lot of people don't realize that. A lot of team members, whether it's on the technical side, marketing, business development, all different aspects of, or rather all the different things you need to do to be successful And then to take a network from testnet to mainnet, it's like a lot of things have to work simultaneously. So I'm super proud of the team. I think they should be very proud of themselves as well. So they've done a phenomenal job. But then, like I say, this is only the beginning. Now mainnet has gone live. We need to do many things. As a community first chain, we owe it to the community to do the best we can and to build sort of, the largest sort of, or the rather the most impactful Web3 community in the space. And we have that now. We have the resources and we have a bunch of things to help us do that. So now the onus is on us to sort of deliver the best product we can and sort of the best community we can to Web3. So the work really starts now.
I imagine being at Polygon during the last bull cycle must have been a really fun time. One of the darlings of the 2021 cycle. That must have been amazing. And hopefully you get to experience that same thing in the next cycle here with Mantle. But speaking of kind of successes, and you said you guys are doing quite well and have good resources. First, I'd love to get a little bit of background of just what Mantle is. But you guys have a treasury of $2.4 billion. That includes 260,000
Right.
ETH. And then that doesn't even count. You guys just launched Mantle, the token, which I think was like another 1.4 billion or whatever that is. Where the heck did you guys get all this? Maybe walk us through the story a little bit of Mantle and how you guys accumulated this many assets. It's wild.
So actually the story starts back during my Polygon days, right? It's back in 2020, 2021. What we saw was the Binance Smart Chain. Binance had sort of launched Binance Smart Chain. They started building out in earnest, the first foray into, you could say, building a decentralized community. And Binance Smart Chain was super successful. That model of an exchange and a chain working together kind of proved its value, which is very interesting because later you saw FTX Solana try like a similar kind of a building theory, but obviously, that things went a little different there. But so Binance Smart Chain was very successful. And then what happened is that every exchange, was like, hey, this is what we should be doing. And then we saw Obi tried their own chain, OKX tried their own chain. So you had the founders of Bybit. So Bybit was, again, one of the largest sort of exchanges in the space, mainly focused on sort of, you could say, investors. So it was mostly a derivatives, sort of an exchange. It had a pretty, I would say, healthy spot volume, but the focus was mostly on derivatives, options, trading. So there was a lot of pressure on the founders of Bybit as well from their community saying that, hey, where is our chain? Everyone has a chain, we should be building a chain. And that's kind of when the founders of Bybit took like this very interesting approach, right? So instead of trying to build a chain, what they decided is, okay, let's take our resources and let's build a DAO. We'll build a DAO. And then the DAO can decide whatever it wants to do. The DAO wants to build a chain, they want to build this, that. That's the DAO's decision. But from our side, let's try to do this in the most decentralized way possible. And this is kind of when they decided that, okay, let's build this DAO. This DAO should have its own token so that we can have governance, voting, etc. What Bybit also did is that they took, I think, about 2.5 BPS of their volume, of their daily volume, right? And started plugging that back into the BitDAO treasury so that there is a treasury for the DAO to, sort of draw upon. And obviously during the bull cycle, being a derivatives exchange on a daily basis, they were doing huge volumes. So all of those resources kept sort of flowing into the DAO treasury. And after a while, of course, Bybit stopped doing that. And then the treasury, reached a size where it became, let's say in some sense, where there was high confidence that this could lead to multiple self-sustaining businesses, as long as the DAO made the right decisions. So the DAO kind of started as an investment DAO. They invested in Game 7, it invested in EduDAO. So there were many focus areas. So one focus area was gaming, where they made investments in Game 7 with the idea that, gaming has the ability to bring in a huge number of users into Web3. So we should do that. They invested in EduDAO, which was focused on, research and education, because if you want to take the space forward, we need to do that as well. And then I would say this was about last year, if I'm not wrong, July, August, or June actually, when a proposal was put onto the DAO, which, hey, why don't we build a chain? And then the community started discussing that, okay, if you want to build infrastructure, what should it look like? And why should we build it? So there was a long series of discussions, after which a proposal was put through and it was passed. And that's literally how Mantle was born. The Mantle chain, this whole team we see, all of these resources which we have, all of them have come from the DAO. And the chain was literally born out of a DAO board. So we're very decentralized from the day zero. And since we were born out of a community action, right from day zero, we've had a very large community to back us. And this is when, once the vote was passed, then there was another proposal for, let's say, all the resources we need to get through the testnet phase. And then once we go into mainnet, we'll get these other, let's say, extra resources to, sort of build out during the mainnet phase. All of the resources came from the DAO, proposals were passed, folks like me joined the team. That is literally, the story of Mantle. So
Sorry about that. Super interesting. I didn't realize it came from Bybit. I had no idea about that. The DAO though, any idea how many members are in there? And like, did they all just come from like they were just ex-users or current users of Bybit, or like how did that DAO get built out?
it's a pretty big mix actually. So when I see it, the DAO has equal parts traders, equal parts funds, and equal parts, let's say, community members who want to take part in governance. I think the last count, we probably have anywhere from 25 to 30,000 members or bit holders who've been participating in governance. You can go to mantle.xyz, go to governance, see our forums, right? And you'll see like all the different proposals. Again, through Mantle, we'll have the ability to further expand the community. So as we can keep giving out grants, as we do like other investments in the space, etc., we'll be able to put MNT, with the token in the hands of more people. And over a period of time, continue to decentralize the DAO. A lot of the MNT funds are held by the treasury. So we also have this delegation tool where if you go to, again, mantle.xyz, go to governance, you can go to delegation. And then, what we plan to do over a period of time is delegate votes out there to, let's say, pillars of the community, to hackathon winners, so that good builders, good people are part of the governance process, and that we're able to take, better and better decisions in the time to come. So that's kind of how we planned sort of ecosystem building, DAO building, and to ensure that, that we follow the ethos of how the chain was born, which is, we always focus on being community owned, community led, and community governed. So this is kind of how we are designing like our processes internally.
So just to summarize, what I'm understanding is, so Bybit exchange doing very well, could have stayed as centralized. Founding team decided to go decentralized, created BitDAO, decentralized Bybit, which had huge revenues during the bull run, took that revenue, put it into a treasury, and then started investing in, as you said, Game 7, focused on gaming, EduDAO, focused on education. We actually had one of the founders on EduDAO on the podcast about a year ago. And,
That's great.
And now Mantle, as well as some other projects. So that's how Mantle now has this large treasury of $2.4 billion, which is wild to think about. So what was the reason or the purpose of starting Mantle? What was the mission that everyone said, okay, we need to go build out Mantle and build this layer 2? Why do that?
So the DAO, like I said, started as an investment DAO, right? But when you start doing investments at that scale, right, it becomes very tricky because you want to be decentralized, but then you also have to follow, let's say, procedures of, creating companies, doing other things, like, let's say, being able to manage all of those investments. And over a period of time, what I think the members of the DAO also realize that if we want to have real impact on Web3, if we really want to take Web3 forward, then one of the most core pieces of this entire puzzle is going to be infrastructure. So instead of trying to make these investments in random places, let's keep this infrastructure at the core, and then let's build the ecosystem around that, right? And if you can do that, then essentially you'll be able to like use the current value which you have to create massively new value, right, for the community and for all the token holders as well. And then this in turn will lead to sort of mass adoption of Web3. So instead of sort of investing, let's say, randomly here and there, why don't we have a piece of infrastructure and then focus on sort of growing that piece? Because ultimately, that's exactly what you'd be doing in any case, except that now it was scattered. Now it's just focused. So that's kind of why BitDAO is now Mantle governance. That's kind of why we rebranded the entire ecosystem to Mantle, the token from Bit to MNT, because this is kind of what we want to do. So the DAO now has taken on a new form where it is more of a product-focused DAO, right? Which is where we say that Mantle is the first product where we can do massive value creation and build a great community. There are other products on the way. So one of the things which you'll see on the website is liquid staking derivatives like an LST protocol. Through governance, we will continue to build out other new products, but all of these products will be synergistic in nature, built around this core infrastructure piece, right? So if I were to talk about the entire ecosystem of Mantle, it's not just the DAO, right? So if you look at, like, for example, for me, if I were to describe it as a chain, so we've got like massive resources in a DAO, right? We also have the support of a large exchange, right? We also have the support of the venture arm of Bybit, right? Which is Mirana Ventures, which is a LP in like every major fund you may have heard of, like Dragonfly, Pantera, Lemnis Cap, Folius, Play Ventures, Animoca Brands. So essentially it's a fund of funds. So we've got a big ecosystem there. We also have a few other companies like Yeehaw Games, which is bringing Web2 games to Web3. There's another, let's say, order book exchange called Apex Dex. So it's a very large ecosystem of, you could say, of companies and bodies, or decentralized bodies, which are all working synergistically around this one core infrastructure piece which exists today. So if you look at it as a sort of an impact or a value creation engine, like this is the best setup you can possibly hope for. And like I was telling you earlier, that with Binance and with some of the other chains, we've seen that the chain and the exchange model has the potential to create tremendous value. The only problem we've seen is that in many cases, because if they're run in a very centralized manner, then there's a very high chance that eventually the system will be either co-opted by bad individuals, what we saw in the FTX case, or rather become sort of this haven for, let's say, projects which tend to destroy value, like, let's say pump and dump schemes. So what you need in any model where there is a chain and an exchange, where you have this engine of, mutual value creation, which can create tremendous value, is that you need a system of checks and balances. And this is kind of why our ecosystem is so interesting, is that we have, you could say, a DAO, right? So we've got our own, you could say, decentralized SEC to ensure that this entire ecosystem continues to create value. Because like I was saying, that Mantle was born out of a DAO vote. The DAO also has the power to kill Mantle. So tomorrow, if we start doing all sorts of crazy stuff on the chain, all of these pump and dump schemes, etc., the DAO can decide that, guys, we didn't sign up for this. Kill the product or kill the team. And then it would be like a hard refresh. So this is kind of why in any model like this, or rather in any model in the world where there's chance of tremendous value creation, there's always a chance it'll be co-opted by wrong people, which is kind of why if you have a decentralized body like a DAO, which has all the money and ultimate powers, then you can ensure that the system will always behave in a certain way where we are always creating value for the users versus trying to extract or destroy value. And that's kind of why our setup is so unique, and why we feel it has a higher chance of success in the long run.
Really cool. And so do you still have an affiliation with Bybit? And just to clarify, Jay, when you gave your summary, they didn't decentralize Bybit. Bybit still exists as a centralized exchange. It's still its own thing. Yes. They just share some revenues and sent, I think it's at 2.5% or whatever it was over. Does that still exist? And is there still this sort of affiliation? Or now that it's Mantle, has it moved and it's completely separate entity now and there's no affiliation?
Separate entity. So there's no relation as such. I would just say we would still work in a synergistic manner. So I'll give you an example. So what does an exchange want at the end of the day? The exchange wants high quality projects to come and list their tokens. So in Mantle, what we can ensure is that the projects which are doing really well, which are creating lots of value and have built large communities, we can give them, let's say, preferential treatment, or rather get them listed early on, so that they're able to create even more value. So when you have sort of this kind of a system where you have an exchange as a sister entity, in some sense, then, you can play these synergistic games and you don't have, teams don't have to jump through hoops if they need to, for example, get on an exchange and get ultimate distribution. So that's kind of how it works. It's more like a federation. So when I say Mantle Treasury, it's not as if, I can go to the DAO, take out 100 million. That's not how it works. Everything requires a proposal. If you go through our forums, right from the Eco Fund, or you know what, if you really want to see pure transparency, go to mantle.xyz, go to governance, go to Treasury Monitor. And this is something which is very unique, which only we do, right? So if you go to the Treasury Monitor, you can in fact pull that up right now. You can go to the Treasury Monitor and you can see every dollar which we've got from the DAO, how we are spending it, line item by line item. I'd love it if you could maybe share the screen and show it, or maybe
Yeah. I'm bringing it up right now. Let's take a look.
So if you just look at that, right? So line item by line item, you can see, because all of the resources which we have come from the DAO. This is not VC money, or this is not somebody's pocket money, right? This is the community's money. Yeah, so click on Mantle Network Budget, just click on View, and then you can see line item by line item. If you scroll down, all the transactions which you've done, and you can go to USDC received, sent, if you pull that down.
So we're seeing here 2.5 million USD sent out in May 2023, 1 million for funding, 700,000 for workforce, 23,000 for marketing. Wow, you don't need much on marketing when you're an effective network. Super cool. Wow, this is amazing.
Completely transparent. And this is updated every 2 weeks. Everything we do is completely transparent. You can see where you spent, what we've done. And no network operates like this. Nobody has a real live tracked P&L. Right? But we have to do this because the way we see it, it's our responsibility to the DAO. We want to operate in this transparent, decentralized manner. So, and we want to put pressure on others as well, that this is how you should actually run your chain. You should be this transparent at the end of the day. So this is kind of gives you a flavor of how we think about these problems, how we want to run, the kind of culture which we built internally, and what the community can expect in the time to come. We want to be very transparent and have let's say community participation via sort of governance and sort of snapshots, so that we can execute these things. It's also a fine balance where we want to involve the community for all critical decisions, but on a day-to-day basis, let's say you want to run the company, the team should have the freedom to do it. Mm-hmm. But because we have the tools like the Treasury Monitor, we can always ensure that even when the team has the responsibility and the power to do things, it's still transparent. So that's kind of how we've structured it.
Well, I was just going to say, so you guys recently launched the mainnet for Mantle. Would love to just hear kind of your thoughts around that, how that went. Did anything happen? Did anything break? Did everything work smoothly? What was that like? And then I'd love to just dive into the conversation of, I mean, we talk about L2s all the time. It's the hot thing right now, L2 summer, you call it, although we've been calling it L2 summer for years now, but finally we have it. But it's heating up, this competition. There's a lot happening there. It seems everyone's moving there. There's a lot of value moving to L2s. So we'd love to hear, is there a differentiator between Mantle and the others? Or is it just there's so much block space needed that like we just need a bunch of these L2s and you don't even really need to differentiate? Would love to hear kind of your thoughts around that.
Great question. So I think coming to the mainnet launch, like again, super exciting. Things have gone really well, touch wood. So as such, the network has been rock solid. Like I said, we've got like great feedback regarding like how responsive the network is, how the user interactions are like. So super proud of the team for having delivered such a great product. In terms of like how the chain is structured, we've gone with the OP stack. So we've gone with let's say the original OP stack, the OVM version, not Bedrock. So I think that's the next step for us. But we've gone with the original OP stack. We've sort of built into it, like you could say, a modular design, where for data availability, we've got EigenLayer. So this is also interesting that we are using Eigen data availability, but its EigenDA is actually still not in production. I think it will possibly be in production in another 3-4 months. So then we can open source those contracts and switch to EigenLayers, EigenDA. But we wanted to be a modular chain from day zero. And to an extent, you could say the market has kind of, in some sense, validated our technology choices, because I recently saw the forum post for what has been proposed for the Cello L2. Right. And it's basically the same design, go with OP stack, build around EigenLayer. So we were like super happy because in some sense it validates our design choices of how we wanted to build the network. And, we slowly the TVL is climbing. I think we've gone past now 20 million and, it's just growing on a day-to-day basis. A big focus for us as a blockchain is to, build lots and lots of native dApps. So when you Mantle, for example, and this kind of ties into the other question which you asked me about, this crowded space of L2s. The core strategy of Mantle is that we want to be able to build our own blue chip projects. See, when you have the liquidity, you got the infrastructure, right? So you got liquidity, you got the infrastructure, and you have an exchange. You have the power to build your own blue chips, right? And we want to turn Mantle Network into this haven for like great builders and great entrepreneurs to come and sort of build the next unicorns of the Web3 space, because we have the liquidity and sort of the distribution mechanism to help them. So expect to see like a large number of native projects. So, for us, the journey is going to be, let's say the curve is going to be, it's going to grow slowly, but then that growth will never stop, right? Simply because you're going to see great protocols come out, great teams come out of Mantle, each creating sort of their own value creation engine and, all sorts of new tokens. And then we expect to see like a lot of value be created on our network. And so this is the core principle of how we want to like build our network, where instead of focusing on existing blue chips, which are already deployed on 9 or 10 chains, let's focus on native projects first. Let's also prove our technology, right? Like all the things I told you, this is new tech. It's not been seen in the market before. And I think, over a period of time, more and more existing blue chip and some of the largest projects in the space will also take notice and then come work with us. But we want to be there for the builder, right? We want to be there for the community first. So that's kind of the focus which we have when it comes to building out our network.
Will you have like a certain niche? Like, I mean, like immutables, like gaming, Polygon is, I don't know, big brands, NFTs kind of thing, and loyalties, etc. You've got like Arbitrum, which maybe is focusing on DeFi. Is there going to be a niche for Mantle, or what's your guys' thought process?
So it's a great question. Again, so in terms of the network, we built a generalized smart contract layer, which is like super low fees, very fast transactions without like compromising security. So I think technically you can build anything. I think DeFi is a very natural fit. Because of, like I said, the ecosystem advantages which we have. But we're seeing lots of gaming projects also deploy with us, because ultimately, whether you're gaming, whether you're NFT, the problems you need to solve are still the same across, like, when you look at it from an ecosystem perspective, and we can solve those problems for projects. We aim to build a very composable ecosystem as well. So I would not say that it will only be DeFi. I'll probably start with DeFi. We are seeing a lot of interesting, let's say, growth in DeFi as well, right? With different types of DEXs now, concentrated liquidity models, perp DEXs, perpetuals, options. So I expect to see a lot of that first, but then a lot of games are also deploying lots of NFT projects as, are to come. So I think we will have a very composable ecosystem. So I would not say we have a very, let's say, niche, but I think just because of the advantages which we have, I can kind of understand why DeFi builders would want to work with us, and, and why our strengths play directly into how, DeFi projects grow and scale. Coming back to the other point, which you also talked about, that in this crowded, like, sort of L2 space. So you're right. So first things I want to say is that I'm super happy that this is the state we are in, where there are so many different chains. It kind of shows you that over the last 3 or 4 years, we've reached a point in Web3 technology where the barrier to entry when it comes to building your own chain is reduced so much. that you can literally launch a chain in like 2 or 3 months. I think it's great for the space because it's still so early. In terms of how we plan to differentiate ourselves is what I always tell people in Web3, generally as a thought process, is that in Web3, technology is open source, right? So what that means is that if you deploy technology on Monday, like by Tuesday, everyone has access to the same, or rather by Monday evening, like everybody's got access to the same technology. So in open source technology, right? Or rather in the open source world, technology is commodity. Right? Everybody has access to the same technology at the same period of time. Unless you decide that, oh, we want to license this, because then if you start doing that, you're back to Web 2. So when you have a world where technology is commodity, the only differentiator or the only, let's say, measure of stickiness can be ecosystem. Right? And when it comes to ecosystem, we've got an overwhelming advantage. In fact, I would dare say that the advantage which we have is impossible to replicate. Like there is no other way where you can get like, an exchange, a huge pool of liquidity, this kind of a community, a venture arm, which is like, so well known and as well-oiled engine, and all of these other companies also working with us. Like the cold start problem for us is a solved problem. Like all we really need to do is deliver great technology, ensure that we support these ecosystem dApps who are building with us. And as long as we can do that, we could say have assured growth in some sense. So I would say that our ecosystem advantage is a core differentiator. And like I was telling you earlier, that I feel is the only differentiator you can have which will stand the test of time. Because over a period of time, technology is going to become even more commoditized. It will only become easier to launch chains in the future. But will it become easier to launch ecosystems? No, I don't think so. Like for those, you need those ecosystem growth levers. And we've got like a unique, let's say, set of ecosystem growth levers, which like I was explaining earlier, this is impossible to replicate. So that's kind of how I would explain it.
I want to dive more into the ecosystem, but before I just need to make a comment on what you said that you can now launch a chain in 2 to 3 months. That's not far off. Like, you say that kind of like exaggerating, but you guys went from testnet in January of 2023.
Oh, I'm not exaggerating at all.
Yeah,
in fact,
here 7 months later.
The data point I'm going off of is the Zora team who was able to deploy an OP stack, I think in like about 60 odd days. Right. So I said 2-3 months. It's already lower than that. And right. So it's going to be like 2 weeks in just maybe another quarter or something like that. Right. Which is great. I feel that barrier of entry has to go. It has to become super easy. Right. Which is kind of why we are seeing these layer 3 app chain narratives come, because people realize now launching a chain is not a big deal anymore, or running them or doing all of these things. But building ecosystems, that continues to remain the challenge. And that will only become more difficult with time. That barrier is only going to get tougher and tougher and tougher. So which is kind of why you need like a real like interesting mix there.
So Mantle Network, the L2, is clearly the baseline infrastructure of Mantle ecosystem and a very important piece of Mantle ecosystem. What are the other main pieces? We've sort of touched on the Mantle governance, MNT token, the fund. Can we go through a few of those main pieces, maybe starting with the token and break that down and how that supports the ecosystem?
Very interesting. Let me explain it like this, right? So when you look at an ecosystem, let's talk about the ecosystem growth parts, and I'll kind of talk to you about how the MNT token fits into this entire scheme of things, right? So what are the moving parts we have? So we've discussed, we have the chain, right? Where essentially the MNT token will be used for gas fees. It'll be used for infrastructure staking in the data availability layer. It'll be used as the ecosystem token. So all the DeFi, all the gaming, everyone's going to use MNT. So that's the chain. Then we have the DAO, right? Mantle governance, where again, you have the MNT token you'll be using to make all of these critical decisions, whether they're related to capital or to, let's say, growing or developing this ecosystem. Then we have the exchange, where essentially MNT doesn't have a use case at all. It's essentially just listed there, where, we just want to use the exchange to give projects distribution, but it's a part of the ecosystem. Apart from that, we also have new upcoming products. So for example, we're building a liquid staking derivatives product. So if you see our treasury, we've got almost 266,000 ETH in there. So we felt that why don't we, create a LSD protocol. First, number one, secure Ethereum. Number two, use those tokens to restake on EigenLayer and secure our own network for added security. And then we will also get yield, which we can further use to develop our ecosystem. And MNT token will have a use case here as well, right? So if you think about the MNT token, it is kind of like, you could say, an ecosystem token where over a period of time, it will capture the value, or rather all the value which is being created in this entire growth engine, whether it's the chain, whether it's the LSD product, or possibly any other future products, right? So this is the kind of, you could say, thought process which we wanted to go with, that we continue to build more and more utility and more use cases into the MNT token. And if we can continue to do that, then we can build a big ecosystem. The governance will have more meaning because now it impacts like a series of products, right? So it'll become a truly large ecosystem, and then the token will capture all of this value. So that's kind of how we've structured this. Now, in between, we also have the other growth engines. We've got Mirana Ventures, like I said, the venture arm of Bybit. Now, Mirana Ventures is also interestingly running our $200 million sort of ecosystem fund because it makes sense. These people are experts on investments, have all the tooling, all the processes, all the right people. So they'll be helping us run our $200 million ecosystem fund. We also have a grant program where, we want to give grants to upcoming projects. And we've now revamped the process after doing the first cohort. We're going more and more detailed into projects and trying to see, which ones would add the most value to our ecosystem. We're exploring other ways in which we can involve the community in some of this decision making. And you'll see some of those proposals out in the weeks to come. So we're doing like a bunch of different things to sort of impact the ecosystem and expect to see more and more use cases. Like I said, the trajectory of the DAO now is to be a product-focused DAO and to create products which is synergistic with this entire ecosystem. So in some sense, you will see MNT get wrapped into more and more products as time progresses. And luckily, we have the resources to continue to take those kind of bets of newer products. And yeah, so that's kind of how we've designed the entire ecosystem and the token economy.
When you guys are talking about, let's say you're just strategizing about, the future of Mantle and that, the synergy I see here is Mantle's like a country, right? Like you've got this new L2, which is like the real estate. That's the land of the country. You've got the DAO, which is the government. You've got the token, which is your currency. And then all these products and all these additional things being built are either like your cities or like the businesses, the big buildings that are being built. And you're basically trying to create a brand new digital nation, essentially. Do you guys see it as that way? Because that's what it feels like to me.
That is a great explanation, I must say. I can't say I visualized it exactly like that, but I think now that I'm beginning to see it, that makes total sense. That's exactly what we're doing. Like at the end of the day, if you ask me that, Arjun, all this value creation and all of this stuff, like what's the real goal here? Like why are you really doing all this? And then I would say that our objective is to build sort of, the largest and the most impactful community in Web3. Like, use all these resources, all these advantages that we have to really take Web3 forward. Right from BitDAO's case, or even if I go to even the creation of BitDAO, the focus always was on decentralization and sort of, to have sort of faith in token governed technology. So I think that's just such a great explanation. It's exactly like this. It's exactly like a country in some sense, and we want to build like the most awesome country out there. So, yeah.
I love that. And the interesting thing to me is the ways that you guys find revenues. And I love the idea of you've got this big treasury. I mean, you use that treasury to give grants and bring builders in and incentivize people to build in Mantle, just like countries do when they want companies to come in. They give tax benefits, they give grants, etc. That's just how it kind of works. But I love the idea of, well, we've got this big treasury. Why don't we stake it? That helps to secure the underlying land that we're building on. Right? And you can stake it two ways. You said you guys are going to stake it on Ethereum, but also using EigenLayer, which then stakes and secures your own network. So you're sort of like, you're securing multiple different pieces of the infrastructure, which I think is really interesting. Now, this has been I don't know if I'd call it fun, but there's been a lot of noise about how you guys are going to stake this much ETH and where. I saw a bunch on Twitter going on of you guys going to put this on Lido, and then Lido's a touchy subject in the Ethereum ecosystem. So now you're talking about potentially making your own. Walk us through what happened there and kind of like what you guys are thinking about in terms of how you're going to stake, I don't know how much you're going to stake, but you've got 260,000 ETH. So I'm sure you'll do a decent proportion of that.
Again, this has to go through governance. So I can just give you an idea of how we're potentially thinking about this, but ultimately the community will decide what has to be done next. That's kind of why those proposals and those discussions are so important, so that we also understand the voice of the community. Like I can have this opinion about what we should do, but ultimately the arbiter are the token holders. And so this is kind of why we have these open proposals, and we'll continue to have vote. Coming back to the LSD protocol, like you said, there are many advantages in terms of security, in terms of yield. There are also other second order benefits. Like, for example, when you have like 260,000 ETH, it also roughly gives you maybe like 0.5 to 1% of the block space on Ethereum, just via the nature of the stake. So you can then build like some very interesting atomic transactions between L2 and L1, and then sort of like really streamline those sort of, you could say, transactions as well. So it becomes like better UI UX and opens the door for new kinds of DeFi primitives. So there are like some second order effects as well, which I think would be very interesting. Will set us apart as a network. But coming to what you discussed, I think it was, first of all, I really got to sort of really thank and give a shout out to the Lido team. Number one, they've done a phenomenal job. They built a great community. I think they have a great product, and it was so nice to see them, put out a post out there, come in support, saying that, hey, you've got all this ETH. Let's do something with it. Let's secure Ethereum. Yes, you're right. There's been also this other narrative that, has Lido become too centralized? Do we have like too much power in one liquid staking derivative? Should there be more? I think having diversity in LSD protocols is a good idea. ultimately, like we say, having diversity in clients or light clients for the network as well. It's always good for the robustness of the network and reduces point of failures. So building our own LSD product like kind of made sense to us as well, where we could do this. We could also then take the liquid stake tokens and liquidity provision other protocols on the network. So there are like some other like second, third order effects in which how, we can use this to create value for the MNT holders and for the chain as well. So this is kind of how we were thinking about it. Now, the discussion point for us is that, okay, you can build your own LSD product, you can stake your own tokens there, your own ETH there. But then should we take like, let's say a portion of the ETH and then stake that with Lido and with other such well-known and battle-tested protocols, right? And as you could say, as a contribution to Ethereum and decentralization, that's something which we're discussing internally that if yes, then how? Like how much should we stake? What should be the criteria? Because like I said, this is the way we operate this chain, and the way we operate the chain is not just us, like the team doing some research. Like the community has a say. So we're trying to figure out what options we can put in front of the community. The community can then vote, and then we can like exercise those options. So again, these are resources which belong to the DAO. So we have to be like super careful. Like there are a lot of new, let's say, liquid staking derivatives protocols which reached out to us, but we also kind of realized that we would only want to risk these assets with, let's say, battle tested protocols, who withstood the test of time versus maybe some of the new upcoming protocols. So we're trying to like figure out how we can like do this in the best manner. So we put some options in front of the community soon, and then kind of take a vote on that and find an interesting, or rather let's say the best way to utilize ETH and extract, add the most value to the network, and then also be able to create like new value for the ecosystem. Yeah,
absolutely. Really interesting. I want to dive into the token a little bit more. You guys just recently launched MNT, right? Yeah, MNT.
Yeah.
Can you walk us through, I don't know how much you were involved in that, but would love to just hear what that was like. I know when it happened, I mean, you guys obviously raised, well, not raised, but now the market cap is 1.4 billion. So it's quite a bit. So I would say it was quite successful. What were the things you guys were thinking about when doing this? I mean, obviously we know why you did it. It's going to have some utility throughout the ecosystem. So it makes sense. But was there any lessons that you guys learned that you did really well, that maybe you didn't do so well? But yeah, what were your thoughts kind of as you guys launched that?
So I think number one, before we launched MNT, right, and we went on this, let's say, rebranding phase, we kind of realized that the narrative was very confusing. There was the Bit token, then there was the Mantle chain. Like it was very confusing for developers and users. We also kind of realized that the trajectory which the DAO would take would also have changed now to become a product-focused DAO versus an investment DAO, which is kind of where we felt that not only do we need to change the name, and the token essentially is 1:1 Bit token. So it's not as if like we changed the token economics or the distribution. It's literally the same. But what we kind of realized is that if you're taking a different direction, and now that the goals have also changed towards, focusing on products, building utility for this token through the chain and possibly other products in the future, rebranding makes sense. And having, let's say, a new, let's say, focus for this entire ecosystem also makes sense. We've actually put a proposal out there in the forum, which, you guys can look into, and you'll have all the details there of what we did. But these were like some of the things which struck out to us. I think in terms of doing well, I think the token swap has gone without a hitch. I think there were some small red herrings where, for example, there were some delegations which we had done via bid. Some of those got revoked because the token wasn't there. So these are small, you could say, points which are technical in nature, which again, the team has, I think, already found a way to fix. There's a tool now on layer 1 where you can go and swap your token 1:1. So I think all things considered, it has gone really well. I don't think there's been any major failure anywhere. I think the tricky part was that since BIT was already listed on a number of exchanges, we would have to like do that one step at a time, which is kind of why you will see that MNT is on a few exchanges right now, but we'll continue to grow that list and get MNT on more and more exchanges. We have to get legal opinion on the new token because of the way it will be structured as an ecosystem token as well. So I think there were some of those things we need to solve. Some of the things we're still solving. But over and all, I would just say that it's gone without a hitch. Like I can't say we faced any major problem till now. And I think the reception from the community has also been pretty positive.
Where did the name Mantle come from? Scott.
Yeah. So I think it was something like, what supports, you could say, like all the civilization and everything which happens on the surface of the earth. You've got the mantle, which supports all of that. So it was kind of that kind of a thought process. And yeah, the community is like run with that, man. Like I think there was a DEX, which is going to be magma. And then I think we got to go full geography on the Mantle network. So I expect to see like all sorts of, I'm just waiting for like volcano or fears or whatever have you. Yeah. But yeah, so that's kind of the thinking for us, that something which supports all civilization and everything and all the life which happens on Earth, like is the Mantle. And that's kind of what we aim to be.
So with so many aspects, so many pillars of the ecosystem, the governance, the community, the token, the chain, what's the priority or the focus over the next, short term, next, I don't know, 3, 6 months, 12 months, you pick the time frame. How do you stay focused, and what is the real focus now?
How do you stay focused? I don't know if I can. Actually, all of these things have to be done simultaneously. I cannot say that we could say that, oh, we want to do chain first with governance. We can figure out. No, that's not really how we want to run the ecosystem, which is kind of why, for us, it's been super important to build these very cohesive and tightly knit teams. All of these teams working together. This is kind of why I think a huge success of why we are where we are right now and where we will be in the future is thanks to the kind of team and the setup which we have, which allows us to work on all of these aspects simultaneously. Like if you think about what happened in the last 3-4 months, we've changed the branding, we've done all the marketing, the community building, the chain has gone live, the token has been exchanged. Like everything has happened simultaneously. It's not as if we have to stop anything. So it will continue to happen this way. And again, like testament to the teams who are able to do that. I think over the next 3 to 6 months, we need to do a couple of things for sure. So one, of course, we need to double down on our ecosystem development plans. So we want to find out of all the, I think 100 plus projects now building on Mantle, which are the ones which are going to be unicorns first. So we're closely watching the ecosystem, trying to see how we can, actively manage the ecosystem, help projects connect to other projects. What do those processes look like? What's sustainable? What's not? So I think doubling down on ecosystem building is super important. And as a addendum to that, focusing all of our ecosystem growth levers, getting the ecosystem fund launched, and that proposal is also passed now, getting, the grant program really well oiled so that, over a period of time, we stop giving grants as a team and, give it more and more to the community to make those decisions. So ecosystem development, definitely super important. Number 2, in terms of technology roadmap, we bought very cutting edge tech to the market, but technology continues to evolve with time. Over the last year, I would say since January of this year, we've been studying ZK technology. We've been looking at what is the new, or rather the next leap we need to take as a network in terms of technology so that we're able to, have the base infrastructure which can support mass adoption. So should we go ZK? Should we do something in between? How do you decentralize, the chain more and more, and how do you make it more and more permissionless? So on the technology side as well, we have to get back to the community in the next couple of months about, okay, guys, now that we have this live, what will happen the next 6 months, or rather after 6 months is this, based on X study which we've done. So we'll continue to sort of focus on technology and see how we could take this modular stack idea and build out all of those different modules, maybe work with other partners for data availability instead of building it ourselves, going with EigenLayer, possibly maybe for the sequencer or for the prover. We could do another partnership and grow as a community. So what does the ecosystem development roadmap look like, and what are we doing there? What the technology roadmap looks like, what are we doing there, so that our users and the community can get a sense of what to expect 6 months from now, is something which we need to now do the next couple of months. And like I said, we've been working on that for a period of time. So I think communicating that and sort of getting started on that roadmap is very important. This is just the beginning. So many things need to work in tandem, and we will do everything simultaneously. That's just how we've created all the different teams, and that's kind of how we work internally as well. So expect to see a lot of these things, and expect to see a lot of adoption as well. A lot of interesting dApps go live. So new builders come and, build exciting new projects on Mantle. So that's kind of a given over the next 3 to 6 months.
Here's the thing that's on my mind. You guys have accomplished a hell of a lot, right? You guys have built so much, and you're doing it, as you said, like all at once. You're building so many different things together. So there's a lot happening all at the same time, and you're doing it via a DAO. DAOs became a big thing. 2021 really is when they took off. Everything was a DAO. Everyone was everything's got to be a DAO. And a lot of them failed, right? A lot of them realized it's really, really hard to work in a decentralized manner in terms of decentralized governance, in terms of just getting work done. Getting shit done in a DAO is very difficult. And a lot of DAOs realized that over the last couple of years. You guys somehow, though, there's not many that made it through this bear market. And by made it, I mean actually built things of value and are now more valuable than previously. How the heck did you guys do that? Is there a trick? What did you notice just being a part of that? Because it's very difficult to make decisions and to go and execute so many different things, especially the things you guys are trying to tackle. Any advice there on how you guys were able to manage that and work together throughout this DAO, which is, I think you said, thousands of people?
It's obviously, it's super challenging. I would not say it's easy, but I think what made it easy for us is to be very clear about what decisions the community needs to make versus what the team needs to make, right? So first, have this bifurcation. like the operating team, like, my team and, marketing and, all of us together need to be able to take a certain number of decisions on a daily basis so that we can run day-to-day operations, right? And all the major decisions like, capital calls, ecosystem fund, what should we do with the ETH we have, like all of those things, those have to be taken by the community because it's the community's resources. And this is kind of, once you have this bifurcation, it's super important. Now, the advantage with the community side is that everything by governance is super transparent. So you know what's happening. Everything the team is doing sometimes can be tricky, which is kind of why the treasury monitor exists. So this is kind of how we decided that, okay, if we are taking decisions, we still need to be very accountable for what we're doing, and having the treasury monitor out there, which is updated like every 2-3 weeks, where we put line item by line item what's happening, it sort of enables us, or rather, you could say that it solves the trust problem the community might have, that, oh, hey, like, the operating team has like these millions of dollars. What are these guys doing? We have no idea. No. Like there's clear transparency there. And then when you have that, that's kind of when you can run effectively as a unit. So I would just give this advice to any like DAO governed project, that be very clear about what decisions have to be taken, and then be transparent so that the community knows like what you're doing with the resources that the community has given to you. And then, have this dialogue with the community, right? So the kind of conversations we're having right now is also a way for me to get the word out to the community to answer those questions. So really appreciate, you guys doing this. And from our side, like we will have to continue to communicate, or rather over communicate with the community about what we're doing, how we're doing these things, so that that level of transparency is maintained throughout as Mantle Network continues to grow and as the ecosystem continues to scale. So I would say that this is like sort of the core way in which we've solved the problem, which we feel is a very effective way in which, you can be token governed, but at the same time be, execution first.
Incredible. I'm so impressed. I want to talk about your upcoming NFT collection. So this is your first native NFT collection, Citizens of Mantle. Can you tell us a little bit about this? I think you're in whitelist right now and the mint is coming up soon.
Yes. So it's just super interesting that this is sort of a dynamic NFT, which you will get if you're part of the whitelist. And then as you continue to interact more with the network, the NFT will continue to morph over time, and gain new attributes and things like this. So essentially, we wanted to turn interacting with Mantle Network into like an RPG game, where you're a character, and the character evolves with a period of time. And then it's clear to everyone, right? So if you have that NFT, let's say, as your, let's say, Twitter sort of profile picture, then people can see that, oh, this is like, and then we plan to have a leaderboard where you can see, the top citizens of Mantle. And then, where, we could incentivize people with like possible incentivization schemes, or even delegations for voting, maybe on the governance side. So this is kind of how we wanted to do it, where essentially turn interacting with the chain into like an RPG game, create a leaderboard where you can see what the top citizens, and then find ways to, involve them even more within the community and the core operations of what we're doing. So that's kind of the plan. And it's by a celebrated artist as well. Chen Man has come up with these like awesome designs, and she's done that before as well. So we have confidence that it's going to be really amazing and really awesome collection. And again, kudos to the team who came up with this design. And I think it's going to be super exciting for the community.
Yeah, the art is amazing. I was looking at it last night. She's an incredible, talented artist. Yeah. Can anyone get access to the whitelist, or is it only for Mantle?
So we'll keep opening it up. So we had the initial, let's say, lot of people who signed up, and then we'll continue to open this up so that, you can gain citizenship to the citizens of Mantle.
To the country. To the country it fits.
Like such a good example. I should explain it.
Passport.
Yeah, it's a passport. Oh wow, there you have it, right? It's a passport, and but one look you can tell, oh, this guy's top citizen. So this is kind of how we want to do. So I think that's a great way. I will explain it like this going forward.
Okay, before we wrap up, I just want to give you a chance to touch on anything that you would like our listeners to take action on, whether it's your grants program, the Eco Fund. We just talked about Citizens of Mantle. Go subscribe to the whitelist and become an NFT holder, become a citizen in the country. How can people get involved in the Mantle ecosystem?
So I think number one, definitely, follow us on Twitter, be a part of our Telegram and Discord channels. That's kind of where we post all the latest information and updates from the network. So you can continuously stay updated on what's happening and all the different things that we're doing. I think the other thing would also be that, if you're interested in governance, then you may want to, let's say, find a way to get hold of, let's say, the M&T token, or if you want to take decisions yourself, if you want to delegate those decisions, then you can be a part of our active governance process where, and to start with, you can go to the forums and you can see the kind of discussions which happen. And then, if you decide you want to be a part of those governance decisions as well, it would be amazing. I think at the end of the day, the more active participation we have in a governance, the better decisions we can take as a community and as a team. That's another way for interacting with us. And then, please try out our network. Please give us some feedback on what we can do better, what we need to do, what we need to improve on. I think the more feedback we get from the community, the easier it is for us to make changes. I'll give you a very clear example as well. Like currently L2Beat, which is, Bartek and his team had put out, some information about, how we need to, our documentation needs to be clearer. So, I met him in HCC, and immediately within 48 hours, like our team was able to make those improvements. And so much so that the L2Beat team also said that we were very impressed that the turnaround time was high. So when we get feedback like this from the community, it gives us a chance to become better and improve, and that's kind of what I was telling that team as well, that, please keep, pouring over all our information and keep telling us, what we can do better. So I think the more people go through our docs, go through our code, be a part of our network, the more feedback we can collect. And that just allows us to be better and better and then deliver even a better product and a better experience to the community. So I would just implore upon the community to please do so and share your feedback with us. And then, we'll get, if there's something to fix, then we'll get right on it.
Fantastic. Okay. Quick speed round, some personal questions. Have some fun before we wrap up here, Arjun. First question, what's one prediction you have for the rest of this year?
Tough one.
That's a really tough one. I would say one prediction I would have, again, at the risk of sounding biased, is that by the end of this year, we would have anywhere from 4 to 6 unicorns on Mantle, right?
Wow.
Because, so I would say that, that's
Polish.
Very yeah.
Okay. One thing you've bought recently for under $100 that brings you joy.
Very interesting. For under $100.
Doesn't need to be a digital asset.
Oh, it doesn't have to be a digital asset? Okay.
No.
Well, I did buy some NFTs though, which have bought me, I would say, considerable amount of joy. But I think the one really lifesaver piece of thing which I bought is I bought this very interesting, I don't have it with me right now, this very interesting multi-block, which is region agnostic, where I can just go and, whether I'm in Europe, I'm in the US, I'm in
much.
It is under $10 and total lifesaver. I cannot tell you. Whenever I walk into this, when any hotel, I just walk in more confidently with my chest out, knowing that, I can charge my device with with no problem. So if you travel a lot, get one of those multi whatever chargers. It'll be a total game changer when it comes to just dealing with those problems. Airport, whatever, it doesn't matter.
Wait a second. You bought NFTs recently? Nobody's buying NFTs right now. I got to come back to that. What NFTs did you buy recently?
Okay, so I don't want to take specific names per se, but I think I was actually exploring NFTs. Just to give you a quick gist, one of the ways I was talking to, let's say I was talking to someone at a very well-known NFT marketplace, and this person gave me this very interesting piece of advice where he said that the way you look at ERC20 tokens, where ERC20 token is not this one thing, right? The governance tokens, the stable coins, yield-bearing tokens, utility tokens. There's so many different types of tokens. You need to look at NFTs the same way, where NFTs is not just art, or it is not just culture, or not just music. There are many categories. There's this culture category. There's sort of the DeFi NFTs, like you see in UV3. So if you look at NFTs the same way you look at ERC20 tokens, it kind of opens your mind to different use cases and how you need to view the NFT space. So I think I was just it's kind of changed the way I look at NFTs somehow. So I when I look at NFTs, I'm not this is an NFT or this is an NFT. It's more this is this category. And this NFTs, is non-fungible tokens, a broader or a general idea of a token type and how these are some of those different use cases. So that's kind of why I was looking at different types of NFTs, not specifically at a collection, but looking at what are the different types, which ones can I buy, what are the utilities like. So that's kind of what I was doing, just to explain that.
Were you buying for investing purposes, or were you buying for the utility or the access?
I was buying it mostly for the utility and the access. I must also say that I'm a terrible investor. So I just don't know how that works somehow, so yeah. So it's mostly for the utility and the learning aspect of it. So yeah.
You should subscribe to Web3 Academy Pro. Will help you very much with your investing.
Oh, really? Oh, that would be a lifesaver, man. So definitely, I should take you up on that. Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, last question. Speaking about NFTs, what's an NFT you'll never sell?
Okay, so I have this one NFT I had bought way back. I don't know if you've heard of this Art Avatar NFT, which are these very awesome, cool face masks. Yeah, I don't think I'll be selling those. Those are like
Because
amongst the
you can't
literally.
because there's no liquidity left, or because you really like them?
I would check. I don't know if there's any liquidity. Totally possible there is none, but I think it's just one of the first like NFTs I bought. So I dude.
Come meeting.
Yeah, I don't think I.
Everybody remembers their first time.
Yeah, no, that was a special experience at the time. Well, oh, see, so it's
Arjun, this was a great experience chatting with you, Kyle, and I greatly appreciate your time. Shout out to the whole Mantle team, to the whole ecosystem, to all people that are involved in building this incredible project that is so focused on doing so in a decentralized way and really living the Web3 ethos. We greatly appreciate that. We need more builders like you in the space. I can't wait to follow along and see the progress of Mantle. 4 to 6 unicorns by the end of the year. There's the prediction to watch out for. We'll have you back on in early 2024 to see if you were right.
oh no, like no, just kidding. No, it's pretty. Oh, did I say 4? I meant 2. No, just kidding. No, we'll totally get there. But I must say thank you so much for having me and asking me all these questions. Like I said, it's so important for us to continuously engage with the community to get the word out there and cover these doubts and questions. So thank you so much for having me and listening to me, and I look forward to our next conversation.
Thanks so much for listening, everybody. Have yourself a great day.
Thank you for listening to Web3 Academy, your one trusted source to capitalize on the next big phase of the internet. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it and subscribe or follow so that you don't miss the next one. While you're at it, there's a link in the description for our free newsletter where we provide timely and relevant Web3 insights so you can confidently build and invest in Web3. Make sure to subscribe today. One final note. This podcast is for educational purposes only, and nothing we say is financial advice. Crypto and Web3 are risky, and you should never invest more than you're willing to lose. Thank you, friends, and see you in the next one.